All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up, where we discuss the latest updates to .NET web development. I'm Daniel Roth, Principal Product Manager for ASP.NET Core on the .NET team. And today I am joined by the awesome Maddy Montaquila, Senior Product Manager on the .NET team for Aspire. Welcome, Maddy.
Wow, thanks, Dan. What a good intro. Usually when I start these, I'm like, hey, oh, good morning.
What are we doing? We're here. Oh, the camera's live. Yeah, I've done that one too. I've got that one in my repertoire as well.
This is fun. I'm already seeing familiar friends in the chat. So hi, everybody.
Well,
but I'm sure, as you know, whenever I run the stream, it is mostly chaotic. And I was just saying to Dan before we started, I'm very excited to not be in charge. There's an adult in the room today, so it's gonna be great.
It's still gonna bring the fun. Still gonna bring the fun to the stream. It's great to have you, Maddy.
Thank you.
So so Maddy and I were chatting a few weeks ago about ASP.NET Core and Aspire and how these two things really are fantastic together. And we wanted to understand more about how do our .NET web developers feel about these technologies. And so we decided that we were going to run a survey, and some of you may have seen this. This showed up on the socials a few weeks ago, and Reddit and Blue Sky and so on, where we asked ASP.NET Core developers to give us their input on the latest tooling for ASP.NET Core, which of course could have meant a whole bunch of things, right? That could have meant hot reload. It could have meant Razor editor. It could have meant a whole bunch of stuff. But we were deliberately ambiguous because we wanted a broad sampling of ASP.NET Core developers to take the survey and give us their thoughts. And it didn't take people very long to realize that, well, this survey was actually about .NET Aspire and ASP.NET Core. And this, I think, was the top comment that got posted on the Reddit thread, which was perfect because it reflected the kind of sentiment that we were actually wanted to explore, that we wanted to understand, like, how many of our ASP.NET Core developers really understand what Aspire is, and do they think it's relevant to them? Like, is it part of the things that they understand is going to add value to their daily development experience?
Yeah, and I was happy that this was the first comment because it meant that people were actually clicking on the survey. So that's always like a good thing. We didn't even try. Dan and I were like, we're not even going to try to hide that this is about Aspire. We're just not going to put it in the post, because a lot of times what happens is people see Aspire and they say, oh, my app isn't up to date, or I'm on framework, or I don't even know what that is, so I'm not relevant for the survey. Even though what this survey was really about was, do you know what it is? Like, it's okay to say no. And so we actually got a lot surveys. We use them as signals. We don't use them as like actual like definitive data, right? Because it's only ever a subset of who's on Reddit that week or who sees the tweet. But we got some really, really good feedback from this one, and I was very excited about it.
So we thought we would share some of this data with the community to see, well, how are things going? What do people think about Aspire? Where are they at? Maybe you will relate to some of these answers, and that's great because you can know you're in good company. So we asked a bunch of questions about Aspire, and this was targeted at ASP.NET Core developers. So I'm filtering here on the folks that said, yes, I use ASP.NET Core regularly as part of my day job for my current project. It's what I work on. So first question, how many ASP.NET Core developers know what Aspire is? Like, we asked them, how familiar are you with Aspire? And they gave us a range of answers. And the response we got is about 3/4. About 3/4 said, yeah, I'm familiar with Aspire. I understand what it's about. So that's good. That's a good high number. It does mean that there's still about 1/4 of our ASP.NET Core crowd that hasn't quite figured out what this Aspire stuff is all about. And I'm guessing some of them may even think it's something different, that it's like, oh, maybe is it a different app model? Like, is it a different way to build web apps? So I'm already using ASP.NET Core, so maybe that's not relevant to me. They may have, I don't know, all sorts of interesting perceptions about what Aspire is about, given that they haven't really internalized what the technology is for yet. So take this number into account when you look at all the other numbers that I'm going to show you. So about 1/4 of the people that responded don't know what Aspire is. So that's a chunk that you'll just have to say, well, obviously they didn't think it was mature or relevant or easy to use because they don't even know what it is yet. So keep that into account. All right, second question is, how many ASP.NET Core developers believe that Aspire is relevant to their current projects, that it adds value, that's something that is applicable to what they do. And that could mean a bunch of things. Like it could mean that the tech they feel like is purpose built for their set of problems, or it might be that they feel like there are some blockers, the things that prevent them from using Aspire. Don't know. So how many people thought it was relevant? And a little under half said it was either really relevant or somewhat relevant to their projects. So that's one's a little, I mean, okay, granted, a quarter of these people don't even know what Aspire is. So how could they possibly know what's relevant? But that still means there's like another quarter that like knows what it is, but doesn't think it's for them for one reason or another. And that's something presumably we'd want to address, because we hope that Aspire is actually relevant to pretty much every ASP.NET Core developer, which is what we're going to be talking about today. All right, next question. Do they think Aspire is mature enough for production use? Now, Aspire shipped, when did Aspire ship the first?
Last May 2024 at Build was GA. So it was in preview for 6 months before that.
Yeah, and it had been in preview. So it's been out for, a little while. It's newer, but it's not like completely hot off the presses. So keep that in mind. So about, a quarter to a fifth of developers think that it's mature. I don't know. Do you think is that fair given where it's at in its life cycle?
I have so many thoughts about this, particularly the word production, because it's like very triggering and it means different things to different people. And maybe we'll get into it later. The TLDR is most of the time when I hear people say Aspire isn't ready for production, they mean deploying to a production environment, that you shouldn't be using Aspire to deploy an app to prod. You shouldn't be using anything to deploy an app to prod if your deployment works today. Do not change your deployment. We have never wanted you to have to rip everything out for Aspire. Aspire deployment is definitely the least mature part of the stack, the platform, but it's not production ready. It's just not for deploying to production right now. For a dev tool, as something that you can use every day in your inner dev loop, and that you should have every team and every repo invested in, we are far beyond production use. And it is being used in production. Do we change fast? Do we move a lot? Yeah, we don't only change once a year like .NET. We change every 6 or so weeks. But we're not breaking APIs left and right. We're not blowing up your stack. We're usually mostly just fixing things, mostly.
Yeah. So this could be about specifically the deployment model in Aspire, which we'll talk more about in just a bit. I mean, this could also just be that .NET devs fairly conservative. They like to wait and see until tech is like really proven itself. I work on Blazor, and Blazor's been out since 2019, I think, is when we shipped the first stable release of Blazor in .NET Core 3.0, even before it became .NET, like the modern .NET platform. And I still get questions from people like, is Blazor here to stay? Is it? A
lot of you know me from Maui. I mean, there was just a question in the chat: Is Maui ready for production? Girl, if you know how many airlines all of their operations were running on Maui, you would be like not worried. So you want to go somewhere? You want to take a flight with a flight attendant on it? Just Maui's fine.
Now Aspire is moving fast. Like it is like shipping releases much quicker than the rest of the .NET platform, and that means lots of innovations, like lots of changes that are happening in the platform. Some people might view that as potentially a signal for immaturity, but it could also just be a signal that we're investing heavily, like we're moving the platform forward quickly, while still maintaining those backwards compatibility concerns, so that people can easily upgrade and keep using their apps. Okay, so some interesting things there on maturity. All right, what about adding Aspire to your existing projects? Like, how easy is it to use, especially if you're starting with a project that already exists? Like, not greenfield. It's not a new project. And again, about almost exactly the same number. About a fifth, a quarter to a fifth of people thought it was either very easy or easy to add to their existing projects. And this is something you've been really exploring with the Aspire team, right? Like you have there's this AspiriFridays live stream that you've been doing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I came in, for context, I came into the Aspire team a little bit over a year ago to take over some of the more like traditional PM stuff from Damien, who kind of helped get it off the ground with the rest of the team. So Damien could go back to working on like cool, hard problems, and I could do the annoying things like, bother all of you to fill out a survey. And so this one is totally on me because I didn't really grasp how complicated all of your apps are, which you'd think I would because I spent years getting people from Xamarin to Maui, like years and years and years. And I was like, I've already done that. Like, how hard can it be? Aspire's this new thing. There's no junk. We're not migrating. It's just new, blah, blah, blah. And so 4 months right before the summer started, we were like, we need to like encourage more people. We need more content around this. But it's all of the intro content you make is so generic for adding Aspire. It's like, yeah, if I too had a single web UI with a single database, I could right click add. And we started the AspiriFridays stream, which have been really, really fun and really insane. Where at first we just picked whatever open source .NET code of a real app we could find. And we're like, let's add Aspire to it. We picked Bitwarden for the first episode, and a bunch of the Bitwarden folks actually like came and hung out in the chat. And then everyone since we've had guests, either internal or external, doing real apps. So it has been a really good learning experience for me to see how much you guys all engineer yourselves into horrific situations, but also it's been a good
clever, Maddy says. Some of them are very clever situations, you know.
Yes, it's also been people seem to really like it. I mean, last week, 2 weeks ago, we ended up going for 5.5 hours, which was a huge accident. I blew off so many meetings because we had Jerry Nixon on who does SQL stuff, and Tommaso Stocchi, who's a cloud solutions architect for Azure in Italy, but he's a big Aspire person and he contributes a lot to our community toolkit. They were like, we have this repo that developers use to create Azure's data API builder. So why don't we just add Aspire to that? We already have an Aspire integration for DAB, they call it. And we were like, how hard can it be? Jerry and Tommaso know Aspire. This will take like 20 minutes, 5.5 hours. So
I mean, for a live stream,
ramble, like, yeah,
it's long, but also like for a large real world project, like taking half a day to add Aspire to the project, that to me sounds amazing. Like in some cases you might think, oh, that's probably going to take my dev team a couple weeks to like figure this out and like do all the things. If you can like do it live on a live stream in a few hours,
exactly,
that doesn't sound too bad to me.
Exactly. And so that's probably one of the things that I've regretted the most in my first year is not doing something like this sooner so that we could start to find the patterns and make you all feel better about it. Or give you the examples or the clips or whatever it is. Cause we were just like, yeah, people will figure it out as they go. And if you watch me on the streams, I've worked in the code base, right? I'm a PM, but I only contribute string changes. They don't let me touch the actual functionality, which is good. But I've worked with Aspire every single day. I've used it every single day for a year. And I still do not even know half of our APIs. Like there's still always something new to me every week. So yeah, I wish we did it earlier.
I think that's probably true of like everything in .NET. Like .NET as a platform is so huge, like so encompassing. Like the mobile space, I know very little about the mobile space, like the area that you've had the long expertise in. Even in the web stack, there are various parts of the web stack that you know better, you're more familiar with, and the others that you haven't touched very much. And always more stuff to learn. And thank goodness for things like AI assistants that can kind of keep more of that in their heads at the same time and help you out.
If it looks or smells or sounds like cores, I just close the window. I have no interest in it. That is not my problem.
Cores is actually one of the areas I know a little bit about. So
yeah, thank God. That's why we balance each other out.
Okay, next, let's we got a couple more of these. So how many are currently actually using Aspire? Now, Grant, it's important to remember this is our social media crowd. They tend to be more active in the community, more influencers, more early adopters, I would say, as well. So we got about a fifth of the people on social media that are AspNetcore devs that are actually using Aspire regularly. I think if we actually look at our product telemetry, like what do we see in Visual Studio, this number is a little bit less for the broader AspNetcore audience. Like we have, I forget how many, a couple million AspNetcore developers, and we have Aspire is a significant and important chunk of that usage space, and it's growing very, very quickly. But ideally, we'd like to see that number even expand faster. Yeah. So good number, 21%. Love to see that higher, and it is growing quickly, which kind of leads nicely into the next question, which is how likely are AspNetcore developers to use Aspire in the next 6 months, and that number is like double. So like, twice the number of people who are currently using Aspire expecting to adopt it, which I think reflects pretty well the level of growth that we're seeing with Aspire, which is like easily double-digit growth month over month.
Oh yeah. Even over the summer, we never see growth over the summer because everyone's on vacation. The Northern Hemisphere summer, the cold Australian winter. But people have been picking up, which is awesome. So makes my life easier.
So there's some good things here. Like there's a bunch of people that do know what Aspire is, a bunch of people that are using it and getting value out of it. But there's still feels like there's some questions, maybe some misconceptions that really should be addressed with our AspNetcore audience. I've shown this slide I think a couple of times now in conference talks, that my personal belief is that Aspire really represents the largest, if not one of the largest, if not the largest tooling investment that we've made for AspNetcore developers in a long time. So if you're an AspNetcore developer and you're not taking advantage of the value that Aspire gives, I think you're missing out. Like there's a ton of stuff here that is custom built for you. It's not a separate app model. It's not a separate like silo. It's not for just people who are using containers. It's not just for people who are using even Azure. It's awesome tools and productivity gains for every single AspNetcore developer. So what we want to do today is we'd like to go through some of the basics, like what is Aspire, make sure everyone here, at least on the call, knows, and everyone who watches this video, talk through what value it actually adds, how you can get that value, even incrementally without, you don't have to use the deployment model necessarily. You don't have to use every single piece of Aspire. You can take pieces of it and still get value. And then talk a little bit about some of those learnings that Maddy, you mentioned from the AspiriFridays exercises, where people are, you're adding Aspire to real world AspNetcore apps. What are some of the good tips and guidance that will help you be able to do that more quickly, so you can use Aspire as part of your day job?
Yeah,
so that's the plan. That's what we're gonna do. So Maddy, give us the basics. Like, what is Aspire and why should AspNetcore developers care?
Of my other regret of the first year of Aspire is that I still can't explain it in a sentence, but nobody can, so it's not my fault.
We can give you
Aspire,
more than one sentence, Maddy. We have more tokens available for you to use than that.
It's true. The tangible one-liner that we like to use is Aspire's tool, templates, and packages for building modern, insert adjective here, apps, right? And so that means things that have multiple services, or have something that runs in a container, or has a front end separate from a back end, or has both a client, desktop, mobile experience and a web experience and a back end, right? Whatever modern means to you is totally within the realm of Aspire. And it's tools, templates, and packages. The other way that I've started to talk about it is it's glue, right? Or it's like the Lego base plate. It is something you can build on top of, and you can customize, and you can turn it into whatever you want, but you're not stuck with it. It's connecting the things you already have. And so I like the Lego analogy the best, because everything is through this central app host project, which is just a C# project. It's C# code. And you declaratively in C# say, okay, in my app, I have this project. It's a web API. This project, it's a Blazor front end. And I have this project, or I have a database, and I'm going to run it locally on a SQL server container on my Docker or my Podman or my Rancher. And these are the things that need to talk to each other. And you do it in C#, which means you have IntelliSense and type safety. So if you're already using Docker Compose, the first thing I hear is, well, I already use Docker Compose. Imagine if you could tab complete Docker Compose. That would be a lot easier. Or if Docker Compose gave you like a squiggly when you did something that wasn't allowed. Or you could debug your Docker Compose. Like, that's the first thing. And that's what we call the Aspire app host, right? And so that alone is the core, but there's a bunch of other things around it, including what we call our integrations. They're NuGet packages. But in the app host, you can pull them in to turn things on. So if you want to turn on Redis and have us just pull the default container and set up the default policies and give you helper methods that most people need for caches, we do that. We give you a NuGet package, and it's subclasses the existing Redis stuff. So we're not wrapping it or I don't know. We're just adding a few things on top. It's glue. We also give you types of integrations called client integrations, which can go into your actual app code. So you pull those into your API, or you pull those into your website, and they turn things on and connect them back to the app host, or just turn them on, or just connect them. It's all code, same deal. It's NuGet packages. You just comment things out that you don't like or don't use them. Because there are a lot of things that we as .NET developers who have been doing this for a while know how to do, like set up your logging and make sure that the HTTPS stuff is all set up correctly. And, you know, we know how to do this. And by we, I mean all of you and me, with usually asking Dan. But a lot of times people coming in to .NET, or people starting on your teams who are coming from a different language or are new to engineering, they are reading this code and it's super obtuse to them. And they're like, I don't understand what any of this means. And so we package them up in a nice little NuGet packages that you can pull in. It will get you started. You can overwrite or extend upon or change our opinions at any point too. We also give you something called the service default. And that's the real like template that we give you, which for .NET developers, we turn on the things that you should turn on for all of your projects, and that we've been telling you we have as features. And you've all said, yeah, I should do that. And then we all know what tech debt does to a team. Like you just say, yeah, we'll do that eventually. So we turn on open telemetry, which is an open standard. We're not locking you anything. We turn in the .NET logger stuff that we turn a bunch of it on by default. We turn on Poly for resiliency. So your apps automatically will start retrying if they fail to hit a container, just like things that you probably had to figure out on each project if you cared enough to do them. And we're like, this feels like boilerplate, but I had to do it. We just give you that. And again, I'll show you guys the file, but it's code. It's C#. You comment out the things you don't want. You can control click and control dot and tab your way to glory with everything.
And it's literally AspNetcore features that they exist today. They're things that maybe some of them you're already using, but many of them probably you just haven't had the time to set up or didn't know you could set them up. Aspire gives you basically just sample code that says, you know, all these things that we think you probably want, but we didn't want to like bake into the framework as like framework opinions, because they probably should live in your app. We'll just give you the code for that, and you can just use it. Yeah, that's something that seems like every AspNetcore app could benefit from right there. You're not. It's not tying you to Azure necessarily. It's not tying you to any particular application model. It's just a bunch of really great, convenient defaults for existing AspNetcore features.
Yeah. And then again, like I know this stream and this audience, like a lot of you are already well into .NET, and you probably have, you know, teams or processes built around deployment. And so you're like, please don't mess that up. Like the second you touch my deployment, everything breaks, and some DevOps person is going to come down and yell at me. What Aspire does for deployment, and this goes back to the production thing too, is we can take that C# file that you wrote that describes everything in your application and how they talk to each other, and translate it into an asset that's usable for you, whether that's a JSON file you hand off, or a set of bicep templates that you can then AZD up to a staging environment, or something that you can use during your CI/CD to create artifacts that are correct. We don't replace anything. It's all opt-in. Like we're not forcing you into using our stuff, but we have seen a lot of teams be able to simplify a lot of their deployment with Aspire, which is awesome. And then I totally breeze by the dashboard, because the dashboard is so it's so like obviously part of Aspire in my brain. I completely forget to talk about it. When you F5 in Visual Studio, we show you everything that you have in your app running, all of their ports, all of their logs. You do not have to click through 77 console windows anymore. And then you can see all the data flowing between them, and it is insanely good. So that's the fourth part.
All the open telemetry data streaming into that one user interface, and it even has some AI integration, right? Like where you can use AI to understand and analyze that data as well.
Yeah, I really like someone just put in the chat, Tal. My one-liner for describing Aspire is modeling your system to enable anything and everything. I really like that. You've probably read some of David Fowler's Medium vibe blog posts, which he's like, modeling, software, Lego. Yeah.
I do want to go back to the deployment question just briefly, because I know that's one that often people seem a little confused by. So if I have an aspnetcore app, and let's say I'm deploying it to like an on-premise IS cluster, right? I've got my own deployment pipeline. Can I still use Aspire, or do I have to like change all that in order to use Aspire?
Yeah, no, you can still use it. The way I like to explain it is Aspire, the app host itself, is not a deployable asset. The C# that you write to describe your app, like you don't deploy that anywhere. It's not a server or a service. It is a manifest with types and debugging. So you don't have to do any of the Aspire opinions or whatever and put those in the cloud. The one thing that can get dicey is what we'll do with Aspire. You can opt into our service discovery, which means that we set the ports and we proxy them for you and we handle that. You can just turn that off, or you can just name your environment variables the same thing we name them, so that in your build scripts, that also just works.
So you don't have to change your deployment mechanism at all to use Aspire. Yeah. Like you can get all of the benefits of the dev time features. Whoops! I guess I have my team still open.
Nah, I think that was me actually. That. Sorry, but I was too busy laughing at Damien's chat. Hi, Damien. MS build. Dan and I said this yesterday. I was like, we say it's like. I was like, we like to joke it's like MS build but better. And then Damien and Fowler were both like, and here he is.
Welcome, Damien. Yeah. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We have a whole bunch of folks from the Aspire team here to help out with that. But yeah, so deployment, if you're using, like, if you're deploying to IIS or you're using, some container-based system, like, that's fine. Like, you can get all the dev time benefits of like being able to start up the whole app locally, get the developer dashboard and see all the telemetry, the metrics, the logs, distributed traces. You can get all that, the service defaults that wire up all those features that aspnetcore already has that maybe you just haven't turned on yet. You can get all that without changing how you deploy in any way. The app host modeling enables different deployment models and can simplify deployment. You might want to look at it as a way to improve how you're deploying things today, but it is absolutely optional. Yeah. And there's certainly no requirement to deploy your Aspire app to any particular cloud. We do, of course, because we're Microsoft, we do have happy path deployment scenarios for deploying your Aspire apps to Azure, like Azure Container Apps, but that's purely optional. It's just a path that we have set up for you that if you choose to use it, you can. You can deploy an Aspire app wherever you'd like.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so that kind of covers what Aspire is, the various features that it adds, like the value that it adds to aspnetcore developers. How do you get started with it? Like, how do you start using it? Do you want to show us a little bit of what it's like to use Aspire? Let me remove my screen here, and I'll switch it over to. Should I add your screen now, Maddy?
Yes, please.
There we go.
I'm in eShop right now. So that is the sample app when we first announced Aspire in .NET 8, .NET Conf, which feels like 100 years ago. I'm going to pull down the banner too, Dan. Sorry. The little ticker on the bottom so I can see my full screen. We used a revised version of eShop on web, which was a sample app we had used a lot in the past for various ASP.NET demos. And so it's Aspirified. The reason I'm starting with eShop is because I want to show you like the type of app this is and not a file new demo. If you want to see a file new demo, you can see 700 of them on the internet. So I'm going to hit F5. We're going to let it roll. We're just going to hope everything magically works. Oh, I don't have Docker started, so that would help. What it did was pop up in this window, and I'll pull things back into my 1080p screen as I need to. This dashboard. And this is all of the things in eShop. A bunch of different APIs and processors, a front-end web app, webhooks, databases, and other things that are going to turn on and run in Docker once my Docker engine turns on, or Podman or Rancher. I use Docker because I have it. Don't come at me. We're not vendor locking you into anything.
I think that's actually really important. Like, I think I've heard this from other people as well, that they think Aspire requires using Docker, that you have to use, and our docs maybe kind of mislead people in this way. Like we often tell people to install Docker when
Yeah.
setting up Aspire, because some of our templates have options for like, setting up a Redis cache in a Docker container, which is a cool thing you can do. It's a cool Aspire feature. Aspire does support integrating with Docker, so you can use Docker. But if you're not using Docker containers for anything, you don't need Docker to use Aspire. It's not. I use Aspire all the time without Docker anything in the app, and I use the dashboard and I get the logs and traces, all that stuff. So again, it's very flexible in terms of you just using the pieces that you want.
Yep. And so you can already see, like, I'm getting these little red circles, and these are errors. And these are things, what's happening is it's actually reading my logs, and it's doing with OpenTelemetry structured logs and traces, saying that my identity API was trying to connect to this database, but the database hadn't started yet. And it did it a few times because we already have it doing the poly retries. And then it eventually fails. So it should probably clear itself up now that Docker's actually open. But I can go and see in my traces, the ordering API tried to run this migration a bunch of times, and it kept failing, probably because the database wasn't awake yet. And this is all on F5, right? I didn't do any magic. This is debugging in Visual Studio. I can, not that button, that button. I should zoom this in a little bit too, sorry. I can go into my front end and like use the app, and log in, and then it's going to crash or something. Where's that button? You see, oh my gosh, there's an error on my navigation for auth. This has always been there. I leave it here because of the demo. But look, it like hit the exception in VS, and it gave me my call stack and all of the other things I like in VS. I hit play, it keeps going, right? Don't save my fake password. Thank you so much. So Aspire is fundamentally, at the end of the day, the most basic thing is it's really good F5. I don't know how many of you have done the thing where you've had to do like right click,
multi-startup projects,
configure startup projects, and then you have to do multiple, and then you do all of this, and then it starts in like 6 days. No more of that. You just run the app host. The app host runs all.
And that setting, like the multiple startups, I believe that's like a solution level setting that doesn't. I don't think it persists. Like if you like check out your giant solution into Git repository and someone clones it, they don't get all that configuration.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
With Aspire, your whole app is modeled in your app host project.
Yeah. And so what that means is that Dan can walk up to any repo and clone it and run it without issues. And the whole thing. Yeah. So this is a fresh clone of eShop. Sometimes I actually demo myself cloning eShop to prove it, but then I got nervous because I just updated all my Visual Studios. So I did not do that. But this is a fresh clone. I didn't do anything except for, as you saw, turn on Docker. There's no deployed services in this. This isn't actually like hitting Azure during runtime at any point. So I don't need to put in a subscription ID, etc. So what does the app host look like? The app host, like I said, is this C# project, soon to be maybe C# file, if you'd prefer that, if you're a single file fan. But it is a project. It's code with the program CS. We renamed that to app host CS in later templates so that you didn't have to have like 17 program CSs open and not know which one was which. But and you can see I'm just using code to declare what is going on. Normal old builder pattern, same thing we use in ASP.NET. And then I'm giving it properties. There are extension methods. So this add Postgres, for example, this is an integration, one of those NuGet packages that we pull in for you. And what we do is we set up a PostgreSQL resource. We pull the container. You're allowed to tell us the tag and the image specifically you want of these things. We're telling you when you restart, when you F5 again, that we shouldn't kill that container and restart it every time, because why would I want to wait for Postgres to start every time I F5? I don't. I'll just leave it. I'll leave it alive in the background. So I stopped debugging, but my containers are still alive here, right? Oh, that's not my container. Then my container, my Postgres and my event bus are still alive here. And then I have my projects down here. So I'm just saying, okay, I have a bunch of APIs. This one, the basket API, so the thing that knows what's in my cart, has to know about the cache. It has to know about the event bus. And it should also know that I'm logged in or not. Just references, right? Nothing too crazy. So we saw with, I think, I can't actually remember which API it was. I think with the identity API is the one that always errors because it doesn't know Yeah. So it always errors because it's waiting for the database to spin up. What you can do is start customizing it with things like wait for. And say, okay, this needs the identity database to be healthy before it tries to turn on. And that will actually get rid of all those errors as it starts up. And you just define things. You keep doing this. So this is a really chunky app host. They can be very simple. They can be very complicated. In this app host in eShop, this is open source. I'll put the link in the chat. Dan, I'm sorry. I should have sent you this link earlier. We also have a bunch of extension methods we built for some of the AI stuff, which we can replace now with some of the things we did in the latest release of Aspire. I just haven't gone around to do that yet. But you can build your own integrations. You can build your own opinions and package those up and share them. You can override or change all of these things under the hood. The primitives are containers or executables. So add project. Oh, what did I just pin? Add project. Also add NPM node JavaScript apps. Add Python. We have Go in the community toolkit. We have Java in the community toolkit. Like adding those things, it's just actually running the executable as its own process on disk. We're not hosting it in .NET or anything fancy. And then other ones, the ones that are container-based, right? Like add Postgres. We run a container for you in your container runtime, and that's it. And so that's the app host. It is the magical clone and run everything. And
so for integrations, Maddy, like like how are they, like you mentioned that we run a container for you when using like a PostgreSQL or whatever, is that functionality part of the integration, that like what happens when you run and what container to pull and all those types of things, and that's somehow how does that get all bundled into the NuGet package? Like if you're writing one of those integrations, besides just adding some .NET code with some convenient APIs in it, like how is an integration different than just a .NET library?
It's not really. It's just extension methods on the existing primitives, right? So I just control clicked into the Redis integration. So source link, baby. We gotta love it. And Aspire is all open source. I don't know if I mentioned that. I feel like I should always make sure. But we had the people on the team who knew how Redis worked say, this is how most people bootstrap a Redis container. We're gonna write these opinions down. Or these are the things that every Redis tutorial makes you do. And so we're going to codify them. There's going to be a password. You need to make this type of resource, the Redis resource, which is what we created. You can see it's an interface on, It's an interface on a regular resource with a parameter, right? We have these very basic primitives. It's a container resource. And then you just keep plugging away. Where's my source?
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so you can just keep plugging away and basically codifying opinions. In this case, we're saying, okay, when the connection string is available, we will get it and then pass it to the projects that need the connection string to talk to the Redis app host or the Redis container. Sorry. And the app host orchestrates it all. In this case, we're even saying like specifically, this is the port that we know the Redis container is going to run on in Docker. So that's the port you should be trying to connect to or proxy through or et cetera. But all of these extension methods on resource, right? These are things you can add or build or extend to anything. So if you want some weird custom container you have, you can just go nuts.
And they can plug into the dev experience as well. Right. As part of it. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Right. And with Aspire, with the app host, you can do as much or as little customization dev stuff as you want. So in this case, we're pretty good about we're using the service discovery, which I'll show you how that works. We're doing wait for, we're doing like the proper with references. So we're letting Aspire handle passing the connection strings and everything. But if you just want to shove things in as regular old environment variables and not change how you do anything today, that's also very valid. And that's actually what we do a lot of on AspiriFridays, because people don't want to tear apart their existing app settings JSON. They want to just make it work.
Yeah. Someone was asking a similar question, I think, in this vein. Like, it would be great if I could just deploy Aspire on premise without using Docker. Like, again, you can. Like, you can keep deploying on premise however you're deploying today, and you don't need to use Docker at all as part of your Aspire application.
Yeah. Even if you're running like on a Windows server, as long as whatever you have in here runs on Windows, it will deploy.
Yep.
So we don't have built-in support before I get this question, because I know all of you and I know what you're going to ask me. We don't have built-in like official support for IIS debugging because most people just use Docker now. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad. Now, we did not block it from working. I have seen people and I have seen community projects that do in fact have like IIS somehow hooked in for local development. So it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. Local dev, if you can do it in VS today, you can do it with Aspire. It's not going to break anything. It's just you're not going to get all of the assets features you get with Aspire.
And mostly what Aspire does is it just goes to there's the thing that kind of, when you run the app host project, it goes to each of the other projects that are modeled and says you should start and you should start and you should start and you should start. And so if one of those is a AspNetcore project that happens to be set up to launch on IIS, does that just work, or do you need to do more beyond that? Like this,
it'll launch it. It'll launch it if it launches in VS. Where it starts to get weird is with the environment variable configuration and the service discovery. And not all of the same
features may light up.
But it turns it on. I mean, it's an executable. I definitely confuse people in the chat with as long as it can run on Windows. What I was saying is if your dev box is a Windows machine and everything you run natively is on Windows and your on-prem servers are Windows boxes, then yeah, you just ran it locally. If you were me, you would probably just start doing containers and push it to Azure because it's easier. Or Docker Compose or Kubernetes or your homegrown containerization orchestration framework or Terraform or whatever you want.
App service? App service?
Yeah, app service. We have preview support in Aspire, but you also don't have to use Aspire to deploy. So you can just do it as you're doing it today. We have a really good AWS integration. So people can easily Aspirify AWS stuff. So yeah. Okay, that tangent aside, let me briefly get back on track. I want to show you folks what the service defaults are. So service defaults is the other project, the template we pull in when you right click add Aspire. So the first thing you should do when you want to add Aspire is right click add Aspire orchestrator support. So many words. And we add the app host, and then we add this thing called service defaults. And most service defaults, the basic template only has the one extensions file. And there are a bunch that we've added in the case of eShop to do more defaults across all of our APIs because it's just a project that's getting source controlled. But we're doing pretty basic things here. Service discovery and resilience, health checks we turn on, open telemetry we turn on, some of the logging things so that we do formatted logs, other miscellaneous. We use the built-in .NET health check stuff. It's wonderful. And then, sorry, I'm reading. I know I can see Damien and Fowler are texting me, and that's either really good or really bad.
The back channel.
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm good. I'm fine. God, you never know. And so the service defaults are just code, right? So if you don't want to use our health checks or your healths are on health Z or you use a health check UI endpoint, then guess what? Just use that. There you go. And then in eShop, we have a bunch of other things. We did a bunch of things to do Open API, more configuration for it in here. And this is just a project now that gets referenced in every single one of my APIs. So if I go into the ordering API and I go to that program and that builder, I'm doing builder.add service defaults, which is just the extension method to my service defaults project. And then I can do anything on top of it. And I do this in all my APIs. So now they all have the same settings for logging and everything turned on. And when you right click add and you F5, all of these things will light up automatically for your .NET projects.
When you add, if you do that gesture in VS that you showed earlier, like add Aspire orchestrator support, that adds two projects, right? It'll add the app host project, which we went through before, which helps you model all the different parts of your app. And then it adds this service defaults project. And the service defaults project really is just a class library with some helper code for setting up how you want to configure your services across all your AspNetcore projects in the solution, right? Is that it? Is that all it does?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, like,
it's that simple.
It's that simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not complicated. Like that. I mean, that's great. I mean, that just means it's easy. There's nothing special or like very Aspire specific about it, other than the opinions about what your service defaults most likely will should be.
Yeah.
So you
And
can use that
because
code
it's
anywhere you like.
just like this line of code, right? Back to the program. If you don't want to use the defaults, or in this case, we're also doing service discovery with this thing, map default endpoints. If you don't want to use them, just don't add that line of code. Who cares? I'm not looking. I mean, I might be, but the app host can still turn everything on and still running your .NET projects. Cool.
All right.
So let's talk about service discovery. Do I want to do a simpler one than ordering? Probably. Let's do basket. Basket's also annoying because of all the gRPC stuff. Maybe catalog. It's all annoying. So most of our samples you will see are using minimal APIs because we're cool and modern. And this was obviously a refreshed version of the app. I probably need to go into services. Catalog AI. I don't want that. No.
So service discovery is just solving the problem of like, what URL do I need to
point
this thing at? And people do all sorts of patterns with aspnetcore's configuration system to like put these things in JSON files or their own environment variables or whatever, so that when you are in a particular environment, all your HP clients and gRPC clients or whatever are pointing to the right addresses. Yeah.
Do you see this? Do you see how this one, there's infrastructure services and the other one is just services? I swear I'm not crazy. I swear. Order services, maybe? I don't know. I don't know where we put it. I'll find it. I'll keep clicking around next time Dan starts talking. Oh, I could probably actually look in the web app in the front end too. So yeah, there we go. That would have been way easier. We give you magic strings. Don't be afraid. That point to things that you define in your app host. So for all of us, when we were back on Windows and Framework and we all had the same dev machines, ports were not a huge issue. We started randomizing them with the ASP.NET templates, so it wasn't like the same HTTPS ports every time you did development, which was, like kind of dicey. You shouldn't do that. But we still now, especially because a lot of us are cross-platform. I use both a Mac and a PC. I use a PC that has a Minecraft server running on it sometimes. I use 2 different APIs that are hard-coded to use the same port when I debug them. Port conflicts are a huge pain, and they're a really big adoption barrier for like clone and run, which is one of the things that we really harp on with Aspire is like anyone should be able to walk up, clone, and run without configuration, or with as minimal configuration as possible. So what we do for service discovery, which it's not even, there's no discovery. Damien actually does not like the word service discovery anymore. He's always like, this is not what this is. We just called it this. It's really environment variables with extra steps. We assign ports and we do proxies. And so when you had started, someone was asking a question in the chat, like, I can't get Aspire to work because I can't let it proxy things. You just turn the proxy off. Like we just set endpoints. We set the proxy, which means that the dashboard is able to like talk to them and configure to them without too many overlaps, with the correct redirects. And then what you can do, yes, there's layers. Damien, just put in the chat. Yes, there are always layers. And then what you can do in your .NET client app code or app code, business logic, whatever you want to call it, builders, not in the app host, is reference the URL for the services by their name that you defined in Aspire. And so in here, if we go to the catalog API, that's just the name I gave that project here. But instead of saying, okay, if development, use port 72 blah, 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 and if deployment, use environment variable, config API, environment variable, I can just use that magic string. And I'll show you how that gets injected, because this is a question we get a lot too, is, well, I'm using Aspire's and service discovery, etc., port management, if you will. And now I can't deploy it because I don't know what the environment variables are. Guess what? You do. You just click on the thing in here and you can see what they're all called. So in this case, what was it? It was the web app talking to the catalog API. If you go into references, you can see the actual type. If you go into environment variables, I can see the endpoints right here. So services, basket API, HTTP 0. This is just how we pass config in .NET. And these are the endpoints for all of these things that are also now running in my dashboard in my Aspirify repo. So this is just what the environment variable is called. If you want to set that by hand.
And we consider that sort of part of the Aspire contract, that like these things are, you can just replicate that pattern and you're good to go.
Yep, exactly. And this works for more than just .NET. So if you wanted to, there's no built-in magic string service discovery because we don't have that in NPM or pip or whatever. But if you're in JavaScript and you want to pass the backend API that way, you can just read it from this environment variable or create an environment variable and pass the endpoint. It's all configurable. Some of the other things you'll see in here, we're turning on all the OTel environment variables for the dashboard to be able to talk to your process. The dashboard is a Blazor server app. It's all Blazor, but it's running locally, so there's no issues with cores. And so the eShop web app also too, we get around a lot of that because it's server side. Client side, there are ways to get around it. I'm not the person you want to ask about those things, but they exist. Yeah. And then there's some other env that we flow, right? Config that we flow in here. Some of the other dashboard things, I always forget to show this because usually what I do when I show this, the graph view, is I just go like this. And then everyone's like, what are you doing? But look at how simple it is. You take a screenshot of it and send it to your boss and you say, see, this is why I can't just change the date. All right. This is why it's not that easy. Okay. Yeah.
A nice high level view of your whole system.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wonder, should we talk a little bit about then, like this is obviously an example of a real world application that had Aspire added to it. And we built eShop with Aspire in mind, obviously, like we wanted to demo and show a lot of Aspire's capabilities. But what if you're not like, starting with a new app like that? If you're starting with Brownfield, do we want to start to show what are some of the tips and tricks for adding Aspire to existing apps that maybe, weren't initially set up with Aspire in mind?
Yes. I got so excited. I was like, I'm going to make a whole presentation. Aspirification tips and tricks, you can see by my title slide. And then I wrote the bullet points and then I got completely sidetracked and I never finished it. So we're just going
just the beginning.
Yeah.
And then dot at the end.
Yeah. And that's actually, I'm proud of myself because I've talked about a few of these. So that's very good. Service defaults we talked about, like you can just comment them out, right? So, or change them or create your own or extend them or etc. And service discovery is the other thing we were just talking about. You can just do environment. Oh, Stuart. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. This is the best video on the internet. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's just called microservices. And it is some guy, some engineer explaining to his PM, me, why he can't just update like the birthday field or something. And it is the funniest freaking video. Truly the best. So thank you, Stuart, for the reference, because that just made my day. And now I have to go watch that again. Okay. So you can turn all this off. You can do proxy false. You can do, is proxied false, I think is actually the property. You can set the ports in a launch JSON, or you can hard code them in the Aspire app host. I don't care what you do. There are so Aspire, a proper fully Aspirified app is going to be .NET Core. We use the iHost application builder pattern to launch your app. So if you're on one of the older builder patterns, like think like .NET 5 or .NET Core 3.0, those have changed. They've been updated. Usually the lift is not heavy. I think Fowler has done it live on the stream twice now, like just out of his brain. And so you just have to do that. Most of the time it's not like this crazy heavy lift. People are like, oh my God, is adding Aspire like migrating from framework to core? No. Get that out of your head. Okay. You're not making any type of change like that. But the builder pattern, if you want to use the native built-in .NET service discovery and service defaults and launch profile and that stuff, then you do want to update that to iHost application builder. Or you can just .NET run it as it is today and not use any of the fancy Aspire stuff and just add it as a path in your app host if you really don't want to update it, but you should update it because it's the right thing to do. One question I get a lot is like, how do I only run a subset of my app? It is a .NET project. You can create launch profiles, and then you can say if def or if development or if is not Maui, don't
Maddy, move
turn
your mouse
on these
a
things.
little bit. I think you're
Oh,
you got there we go. Yeah,
there we
perfect.
go. There we go. Yeah. We've been having this conversation. So for my Maui friends, Maui support should be landing in .NET 10. They were not using iHost application builder, so we had to fix that. And it turns out you can't just ship a new builder pattern in a service release. But one of the things that comes up is, what if I don't want to launch the mobile app every time? Just make a launch profile. I don't know. It's just .NET. We all know how that works. And then it comes in the dropdown in VS. As far as like parameters, app settings, user secrets, there's a lot of stuff here. We talk about these a lot on AspiriFridays, which is part of the reason I didn't want to get too much into it right now. I would say we keep adding features for this. So maybe start with the most recent AspiriFriday and then work your way back. But if you're using app settings very heavily, which I like, don't yell at me, everyone. I like to say app settings.json is the .NET version of a .env file in another language. Okay. It's fine. That may not be true. If you use that or user secrets, when you clone, things can get messed up. You're worried about like deploying or pushing secrets to prod or to source control, all those things. We have built in like secret and parameter management in Aspire. You don't have to use it. You can just pass the environment variables as you do today with the same names. The other thing is that this is the last one, and then I'll let us wrap up. Aspire doesn't always understand if you're doing central package management. And so sometimes you have to go delete the versions that we add to the CS proj, and then you have to go back into your central package management and add them back. Most Aspire packages from Aspire, the repo itself, stay on the same version. They rev together. So once you have it set up, like, it's not an issue anymore. But I have seen this bite many people, including myself, where I'm like, why is the NuGet thing, central, and then you have to copy paste things. Aspire is SDK based. So we use a special SDK to tell you that it's an Aspire app host project. I can show you that quickly. Where is it? Where's my app host? App host. And so, yeah, SDK version 9, right? But in this case, we're doing central package management. And so my package references don't have versions. Those are all in my solution items, NuGet builds, directory packages, props, or whatever, right? And so you can set everything here. Those are my top tips. I'm sure there's more, but Dan, I saw you looking at questions in the chat too, so we can knock some of those out.
There was one where we were talking about adding Aspire to existing apps, and someone asked like, well, can I just get GitHub Copilot to do this for me? How much success have we had with using I know we have the GitHub Copilot app monetization tooling, which has been helping people upgrade from .NET version to .NET version, and they're also working on the much harder problem of doing like .NET framework apps, trying to get those upgraded to .NET modern .NET platform versions. Has there been any anyone looking at using GitHub Copilot to add Aspire to existing apps?
Yes, yeah, we've tried it with varying levels of success over the past few months. Fowler just put in the chat in all caps, which is exactly what I was going to say, which was use an MCP for documentation. Because Aspire is so new, the models are just now starting to understand it, but we keep adding things. And so using an MCP that will pull the latest up-to-date documentation, whether it's the Microsoft Learn or Docs MCP or Context 7 is also really popular. Those ones are going to help you a lot. Also, I generally, when I Aspirify my apps with Copilot, I don't try to one-shot it. I don't say, add Aspire to this. I say, okay, I want to make an Aspire project, an app host project, and I want to, all right, first I want to orchestrate this. That I find does a much, much, much better job. One thing that I've been working on the side is a Copilot instructions that might help with adding Aspire. We're also looking at adding some kind of like a init AI-enabled command in the CLI. But because, like I said at the beginning, and like I will say a million times, you all do crazy, weird things with all your apps. There's no way we can ever predict it all. So, yeah. And watch AspiriFridays, like Damien said.
Awesome. Okay. Well, this is great, Maddy. Thank you for doing this, like, very thorough overview of what
Thank you for
Aspire is all
having me.
about and how to upgrade your apps. It's great to have you on the show. For people that want to, like, take their next steps with Aspire, where would you point them to? We mentioned Aspire Fridays, which is a playlist on the .net YouTube channel, and it's also like there's an Aspire specific YouTube channel that I think those videos are also posted to, that you can subscribe to that one. There's the Aspire homepage. Do you want to show that real quick? Like just the .net/Aspire.
Oh yeah, good idea. Let me pull up a tab.
It's a great place just for getting started with all your learning resources.
Yeah, I usually do. I think it's Aspire-docs. Yeah, that's one. That's the actual doc page. But then there's also .net/Aspire. Is that work?
That's it.
Is that
That's it.
Wow.
That's the landing page for Aspire. So you can get started, start your learning journey here. Tune in for Aspire Fridays, and
And everyone in the chat is also saying the last thing I want to mention. We have a Discord for Aspire now, so we do hang out in the .net Discord if folks are in there. But because we have languages outside of .net using Aspire now, we didn't want to have to make all these people join the .net Discord and be overwhelmed. And so we do have an Aspire Discord. I will put the link up in a banner right now. It is super simple.
And we've included these links, of course, also in the URL list for the stand-up today. So you can also find them from there. So hopefully all you AspNetcore devs out there, you're excited now to go use Aspire. If you're not already, and you now know that yes, it is relevant to you. Yes, it is ready for your current applications. Give it a try. Start using it. Start taking advantage of the value that it adds. Tell all your ASP.NET Core friends so that they know as well. And
the last thing, I guess, my parting thought is, if you have a single project with no containers or no microservices or some monolith, you should still probably use Aspire, because you get that dashboard for free when you have 5. Like, that alone is reason to use it. And then as you start to piece off different services or whatever it is, you can, use Aspire for those things. But Aspire is not just for these crazy big apps. And it's not just for simple, dinky little startup stuff either. It is a beast.
Big
and
to
it's
small.
there for you.
Everything from simple to full scale large applications.
You got it.
Well, thank you everyone for joining with us today. Hopefully you got a chance to get some of your questions answered. Thank you, Damien, Fowler, and other folks that were in the chat helping out there. Be sure to tune in next week for our next AspNet Community Stand Up. And with that, happy coding.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.